Hi, I'm Eileen Bild. I'm with OTEL Universe, and on my show today, OTEL Talk, I am excited to have a conversation with my dear friend, Dr. Nancy Wiley, the author of Divine Trust. She received a MS in Nutrition, a D.D.S, and her board certification as an orthodontist from Columbia University. After practicing many forms of meditation and energy medicine for over 43 years, she's had many mystical experiences that have allowed her to see beyond what most people perceive. Uniting her extensive scientific background and her spiritual training and practices, she's currently dedicated to igniting a massive shift in human consciousness. It's so great to have you here today, and I can't wait to dig into our conversation because there's so much to tell. And I think I want to start with what caused you to write Divine Trust?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so excited to be here too. I love you and I love OTEL University, so I'm excited. Divine Trust came about, I realized years ago that there are many ways to actually get home. And I was taught that the state of trust was one of them. But the teacher at the time had she would spend a month on love, on gratitude, and one on trust. And that is just the way I resonated with. I don't know. All I can say is no matter what happens in my life, when I go to that state of trust, I just become centered and everything's okay. It just takes me home. So I realized that more things happen in my life, and I was using trust to realize that nothing bad ever happens. So my mom passed, and my father, my sister, my brother were all completely depressed for months and months. Not me. I used trust. I realized we all choose our path. I had this innate trust. So then, being an orthodontist on the Parkland Coral Springs border, my office is about 1.5 miles from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And I'm working on the afternoon of February 14th, 2018, and a mom is standing next to me and she goes, "Oh my God, there's an active shooter at Douglas." So my heart sank, and within seconds we heard sirens and sirens. I mean, it was nonstop sirens. So one of my patients was actually really great friends with my office manager, and she was sitting next to two people who were shot dead in there. She saw them shot dead in there. There were, I guess, they were 3 desks. They were sitting at 2, she was sitting at 1, and both of her classmates were shot, and she saw it. So she's on the phone with my office manager, and my office manager is trying to calm her down. Well, this is how, you can only imagine. So we stopped work, and we decided to, we were all in shock. We didn't know what was happening. We just knew from this one patient that 2 people had died. We didn't know anything else. And we didn't know how bad it was. So we stopped working, and, I kind of remember stumbling around that day, but we eventually went home early. And on the way home, I saw all these cars on the side of the streets. All the parents had abandoned their cars because there was gridlock, and they decided to walk the rest of the way, and I can only imagine. Well, it got worse, of course. The next day we found out that one of our patients, our precious patients, was one of the 17, and then my records technician at the time, her sister was one of them. Oh, wow. It was so impactful, but then after that, all the kids, they didn't come in. We really were shut down. It was almost like a ghost town for a couple of weeks. And when they started coming in, they had this look on their face of, it had to be post-traumatic stress.
Right.
But by that time, after about 5 days, because I too was you can imagine when you find out this horrific event happened. So I went deep into my meditation because, I've been meditating now for decades. But it's the specific meditation and connecting me through trust to source. And I asked why the event happened. And I got answers. And that's what the book is about. The answers of why does this happen.
And that's great that you were able to transform such a traumatic experience into a gift that is for others.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to see that there's something bigger in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that trust factor,
Mm-hmm.
that even through trauma, through the trials and tribulations, there is a place we can go where we can find that centeredness.
Right.
And that peace.
Well, divine trust, it melts away anything that is disrupting you, that makes you feel bad or uncertain or discombobulated, and it just brings you right back home. And it makes you come to a place of rest and peace and equanimity that it's like nothing else I've ever experienced. It's just so sublime. It just fills in all of the perturbances in your mind or body.
And I think a lot of people have a difficult time finding that place.
Mm-hmm.
and letting go
Mm-hmm.
of the residual
Mm-hmm.
of the memories and the trauma that they've been through, whatever it is, or just watching
Right.
things in social media, on the news, that can be very disempowering individually.
Right.
And so your book, Divine Trust, gives tools and techniques to be able to move through life.
Mm-hmm.
And not be so connected to life happening to us, but
Right.
more having those daily experiences where it's through us, and through that process we're able to find that place of peace and that place of trust
Mm-hmm.
in everything that's happening around us. And we think it's happening to us, but it's really not, because there's so many principles and so many things that are involved. And I think you've outlined in this book and your platform the ability for people to find ways and to be able to take those times in life that can be debilitating or can block us or be a obstacle, and realize that there's beauty, there's gifts
Mm-hmm.
in every experience.
Exactly. So it's, in my mind, in my perception, it's super simple. It's either we falter and we flounder, or we find a way, find a person. Sometimes it helps to find a person that makes it simple, that has floundered, that has gone this way and that way and found it not to be particularly helpful.
Right.
But I feel like I realize I no longer suffer. No matter what happens to me, I no longer suffer. And I know I can teach other people how to have the same experience through life. So there's two ways to go. There's a way to go of pain and suffering, and then you die, and then, what was it all for? Or there's a way to live where you're living a miraculous life. You realize who you are, what energy is working through you, and life becomes miraculous. And
Miracles happen every day.
Yes.
Yes, and can you imagine a world where the majority
Yes.
of people are living from that
Yes.
foundation?
Yes.
And the
I
fear,
can.
right? And
Right.
and the fear and the distrust
Yeah.
doesn't exist in the forefront. It's I think discernment is important, and
There's definitely human being trust, and then there's source trust, where source is infallible. And once you get there and you see it and you know it and you commune with it, then you know it's infallible. But the human trust, yeah, we still make mistakes because we're living the human condition. So that's the thing.
Yeah, so I have a question for you because you come from a science background,
Yes.
having been an orthodontist, and that tends to be very actual, factual. So when you started to really become aware and conscious and connected with that source energy and that part of life that is real and it's there, how did you navigate and bridge those two different aspects?
Oh, that's a really great question. So I guess when, all of us know inside of us there's an urging. We all have it. Whether you deny it or not, that's human beings. We're all being called home. That is really why we're born, is to learn it is to learn our way home. So as a scientist, it teaches you if it's not real, if you don't see it and you can't reproduce it over and over again in an experiment, it's not real. And so that takes you away from learning and knowing source, because it's, one, science is the left brain and knowing source is the right brained activity. And luckily, when I was little, I realized I manifested a horse into my life, which was cool. And I was 12, I think, 10 or 12 at that time. So I realized, well, I thought about it, and some lady gave me her horse. So that made me think. But then, science, it takes you, and your life is all about learning. So you don't really have much time to devote to it. But I started meditating when I was 16 or 17 with Transcendental Meditation. I didn't find it particularly helpful, but it did thin the veil. It did help me. It did help awaken my right brain. So here I am going through years and years of science and years of meditation. And so I could see there was, like, the two things blurred for me. There was really not just science and just spirituality. They merged. And I can see it, but you don't see it with the mind. You see it with your consciousness or your spirit or your
the
soul.
heart.
Yes.
Or the heart.
I think it's all the same. I don't really differentiate between soul, spirit, heart, consciousness. I think that's all one and of the same. But I do think that's how we're supposed to operate. And the mind, once you surrender to this energy that I call divine trust, your mind starts to think the thoughts of that source. You realize, and everybody is the same way, but they don't realize it like I do, that it's God is looking through our eyes, moving our hands, speaking through our voice, thinking the thoughts. I surrender to this energy every day before I get out of bed. I surrender to it, and I let it use my body as the vehicle for expression and speech. And I think that's where it wrote itself.
Well, you have a key point. It's that surrender. And it's so hard to surrender control because we feel like we have to control everything. And if we're not in total, control of what's going on, then who are we? What's going to happen? Right. That uncertainty is a little uncomfortable and being vulnerable.
I love that, though. I love change, and I love going into the void. But I didn't used to always do it. But now I'm like, okay, if I step into a void, I don't know what's coming. It's always a pleasant, beautiful surprise of what is there waiting for me. It's just like miraculous, and it's just a really juicy way to live life.
Well, the cool thing is that whatever we need to know, whatever is there for us, it's there. It's in that void space. And when you know how to access that, then there's no trying. You're just being, and you're just having life experiences.
Yes.
Because really that's what life's about.
Yes.
It's just our experience and how we respond, not react.
Right.
Can't react to things, it's respond. So what does that response look like? And I think divine trust is trusting in that space that whatever's brought to you is going to be for your highest good.
Yes. Yes.
even if it's a traumatic experience or a not feel such good experience. But the more that you're in that higher consciousness and higher awareness, the less those traumatic and life's trials and tribulations, the less those become a part of your normal experience, and instead the miracles, the daily miracles, show up.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. So in the book, I first teach how to go into a state of trust. And it starts just show you glimpses, but the more you do it, the longer it gets until it's one continuous, and then until it's your come from. That's your living. But I also have the next, it all builds on itself.
Right.
I have people write down all the traumatic events in their life or someone else's life, just on paper, put it on paper. And then once you're in that state of trust, bring one of those situations or events that happen in your life, bring it into that divine trust and see it melt away.
That would be awesome, right?
It is awesome.
Because then people aren't holding on to
Right.
it, and they don't go through that memory and those
Yes.
feelings, and instead they can be in that state of peace and calm and allowing.
Can you imagine if those Parkland kids could do that? If they could take that event and they put it into that energy and watch it be dissolved and just melted away, and then realize that something about that event was meant to transform them, the community, the world,
Yes.
and make us better than what we are right now. That's the whole point.
I was going to say, it seems like the more someone becomes aware and conscious of what we're talking about, the clarity of why are we here. And I think a lot of people ask themselves, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What is the purpose of everything? And I think both of us can agree that there is a purpose, but
Absolutely.
the goal or the way to connect with that purpose is to go into that void, go into the heart space. We can't be in the mind, in the ego, to recognize who we are in that authentic space.
That's correct.
That is clear and part of that bigger energy that's bigger than us.
I don't know if it is the same for you, but I like to intellectually know something, sit with it, like, why are we here? Like, it's all lined out in my book, my version of, it's distilled from all the 40 years of study. Why we're all here. Oh my gosh, this is like fundamental. So I like to have that intellectual knowledge. I sit with it. Sometimes, like, when you first learn something, it doesn't feel true or innate. It's like, that's preposterous. And then you sit with it and you're like, well, maybe if that was true, well, maybe that makes sense. And then soon you're like, your brain is on board, and then you can go deeper into it. So intellectual knowledge, understanding why we're here, and then seeing it firsthand with your consciousness. But I don't know about you, I didn't find it easy. I had to be shown the way.
Well, most people do, I think. Very few people are, coming out of the gate when they're born to keep. I think we're all born with that awareness and that openness, but very few people keep that connection, and then they have to find it again. And the word the brain's on fire kept coming to my mind when you were talking, and I think that fire is that fire within us that gets suppressed or put out, and finding that in order to live life to the fullest, to live it fearlessly, to trust in that divine force that is guiding us, whether we see it or not.
Do you feel like, though, like, think back, like you talked about being a child, having that knowledge or that openness, and then it gets, like, trained out of us.
Yeah.
But can you still see how you had a hunger deep inside? Everybody has that deep hunger, but they just don't know how to fill it. They don't know what's the reason for it? But the reason is that we are expressions of the divine. I mean, that is absolutely, literally true. But we don't realize it, and we don't know how to tap it and get there. And that's what I'm here to is to teach that. How do we realize that we are God incarnate?
Yes, that's a huge task to undertake when there's so much unconsciousness that people don't realize that, don't understand it.
I think now's the time.
Well, it definitely is a stressful time for many, and to live life on a daily basis in fear and in stress and uncertainty is debilitating and creates sickness and disease. And we're fortunate that we don't live in that paradigm. You know, we have a different perspective, a divine trust perspective. And we know that as long as we keep our focus on what works for us and what we know allows us to feel good, then whatever's going on in that external world doesn't impact our personal experiences. And instead, we're uplifting others. So what you're doing with this is to uplift others, to help them to become aware of where are they in their life, in that trust and that understanding, and do they have that connection, and can they get that connection, or how can they get that connection? So what you're teaching and where you're taking your platform is to be that guide and to be the person who can show people the way in a very graceful balance between the science and the spirituality, so that it's understood from the left brain and the right brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very grounded type of expression of the divine. And I know it, and I just want to add to something that you're saying, Eileen, is that I feel or sense, and I'm sure a lot of us do, that there's kind of an urgency that more of us need to wake up. There's an urgency that we need to change the way we're operating now as a human species, or, I don't want to say it because I don't want to bring fear back into their lives, but there is an urgency and a pressure almost. And everyone, if you're listening and you feel that, know that this divine trust helps that go away. It helps you feel confident and sure in yourself and what's going on. And then everything just is wobbling or out of harmony becomes in harmony, and you can withstand anything, and you become the point of harmony for the rest of the planet. And that's what it's like, a domino effect, and then we change the whole planet. The way human beings come from.
That's a great way to say it. And, I look at change and making the world a better place. I kind of vacillate from time to time on, it's more of an extension of that, to where we got as a global consciousness, we really need to take a step back and say, where is history repeating itself? And where do we break that pattern? And until people are not raised, I don't want to say that, until people are raised to come from that space of love, foundational love for one another, not that I'm better than you, or I've got, bigger this, bigger that, more what can we do together to bring that global energy of peace and serenity, and we can live life in a way that we're fulfilling our own unique gift that we came into this world with. And people are in jobs that they enjoy, and the the outcome is in that state of continuity and momentum, so that we're not repeating the destruction. And hopefully what you're presenting with your divine trust and teaching and awakening more people, that will bleed into the next generation and the generation after that. So at some point, what you're doing today, what we're doing today, is the catalyst for what's going to happen in the future. Right?
It has to.
Otherwise, we're going to blow each other up. We're going to blow the world up.
Well,
there won't be a world anymore.
Well, even that. I mean, everything happens for specific reasons. There's not one hair out of place. COVID, meant to happen. So to evolve us, to make us go inward, who knows? To make us have the time to sit there and ask, well, what's life about? Maybe. To maybe make us connected on the internet. Who knows? It's all meant to be. So that trust and realizing that COVID, Ukraine, everything, the unrest within the United States politically, all of it's meant to be.
Well, it's a mirror of the unrest of the internal. I look at things as what's going on inside goes on at the outside, and individually, micro and macro. And I've never understood war. I just for years I think we need to just take flowers and give those to the opposite. What someone might see as the enemy. That's the 60s flower child of me. But on a more serious note, something has to change. Something has to stop, or we are going to, the human species most likely, or more likely than not, going to obliterate themselves.
Right.
And I think people are tired. People are exhausted in the fight, in this fight that we've been having for forever, it seems.
Well, what's the alternative? Operating from this new state of being. It's not new. What I'm writing about and what I'm talking about is known for centuries or thousands of years, probably. But it's, how are we going to take it? And my science background, I have 6 advanced degrees, 3 from Columbia. So that aspect of taking the science and the academics and merging it with the spiritual aspect for a new way of being is what I think it's all about.
Well, and I think that new way of being is actually, I think you mentioned it earlier, it's how we're supposed to be.
Yes.
So we don't have this
It was the way we were meant to be.
Disconnect and the discourse and the craziness. And I think if people can just learn to quiet the mind, to ground and center, and to just be at peace.
Be super speedy. Yes, I agree with everything you're saying.
And I agree with everything you're saying. So we're on the same page, which is great. So I think we've hit a good highlights on who you are and your book, and that everybody matters in the world, and each individual has a gift to bring to the table and to each other. And it's just a matter of bridging and bringing everybody together in that higher consciousness and awareness.
I think it's even more than that. So what I feel is that what's inside of me is inside of you and is inside of you. So I'm no different than you. I just know how to access it. I have the right teachers. So that's the thing that we offer you, is knowing the right way to access the same beautiful experiences that we're talking about here. And that's, I think, the really important message. It's all inside of you.
And that's just the beginning. There's a lot more beyond that. Well, I want to say, Nancy, this has been awesome. It's been a great conversation, and we will definitely be talking again.
Yes.
And seeing
It would
where
be my
your
pleasure.
divine trust takes us and takes the world. And I wish you all the best with where this goes, and have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thank you. You've been so awesome. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you and to share this with your community.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen.
And thank you for watching.